Welcome to today's episode and the topic of Body Talk, the perfect balance of your body. If you would like to listen to this episode on another platform, please follow the link in the description. We are going to look at questions like what is Body Talk, when can it be used, and which benefits can it have? And of course, much more. For the conversation, I invited Dr. Tracey Clark. She works in the field of integrative medicine and Body Talk since 2007. All of her details and links I, of course, put in the description. If you would like to jump around in the episode, feel free. I time-stamped everything for you. So then I can just say thank you for being here and warm welcome. Hello, Tracey.
Hi, Dagmar. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm thrilled to be back and happy to be talking about Body Talk.
Yes, and I'm also very looking forward to that because it's also a topic that is very dear to my heart and having a conversation about it and how it came to be because you're really like in the early stages, you already started to work with it as well. And you got to know John Veltheim. I didn't. So this is pretty amazing that I have the opportunity to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. I am really grateful for the fact that I not only got to meet Dr. Veltheim, but I also got to teach with him and do a variety of different projects with him. He was an incredibly inspirational man. He was so far ahead of his time in terms of his concepts of how he could see a new paradigm for healthcare, and one that was really, to me, the ultimate mind-body approach to healing.
And this is something like what I saw in Body Talk, that everything is put together, and it also left a lot of openings for other things to come in. It was never a closed system to say like, oh, you need to do it like that and nothing else. They actually put other modalities in the protocol where I thought like, this is something that I really like, that you have that opening to other modalities as well.
I couldn't agree more. I think that, nothing is left behind. And you could really say that from the standpoint that Dr. Veltheim understood that there's a whole dynamic within a person, that when we're working toward healthcare, we're not just working toward symptom care. It's not just about the physical body, but really taking a look at the influence of our perceptions, of our beliefs, of our thoughts, our emotions, our energy, our environment. And so from that perspective, the system is incredibly inclusive in terms of how we approach health and healing. But as you say, I think one of the things I love so much about the Body Talk system is that John understood and created within this protocol and procedural process that there are times where there might be another approach to healing, another modality that practitioner has studied or certified in, that would in fact be even more effective for that client at that point in time. And therefore, the system itself would literally take us to that modality. Yeah. And I think because of that, to me, it is the ultimate model of integrative medicine and holistic healthcare, because it honors the holism that is health and healing, and heightens, or I should say highlights, the skills of that practitioner, brings in their tools. I mean, as an integrative medicine practitioner, I have a multifaceted practice. It just means that I've studied many different modalities of healing, and Body Talk is and has always been my go-to for that very reason, because it takes me out of the equation. It helps me to understand when something else in my toolbox is going to be most effective for the client. And boy, I think that it is my secret, absolutely my secret to success in every aspect of my personal practice. And I think it's the system that every multifaceted practitioner out there needs, because it truly, to me, is the recipe for success for that client, and knowing which one of your tools to use when.
Definitely. And it's also, I think it aligns a little bit with the mindset of the practitioner who's actually using the system, because you understand I am also, as a practitioner, not always the perfect fit for the client right now. And so you can't let everything come in a way and say like, oh, I need to help that client or anything. You are completely open and know, okay, if there's another practitioner with another modality coming in, then this is what the system of that client needs right now. And I think that is really, really beautiful.
Oh, I agree. And I mean, if you've ever had any chronic health issue, or I mean, acute, of course, as well, but many people are looking for what is the thing that's going to help to find the solution. And whether you're standing in front of a row of supplements, or you're standing in front of a website or a computer full of practitioners and different modalities, I think that every client where I've had the opportunity to refer them to a modality that has come up as a priority for them, just meaning that it represents an opportunity for support, they're incredibly thankful
Yeah.
that I can direct them towards something that literally is in alignment with their next step toward healing.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. I think that that's an incredible gift, not only to use my own tools, but to be able to send a client to a practitioner that could be supportive for them.
Yeah, definitely. And let us move a little bit back, because we're already totally into the topic, and there you can already hear we both use BodyTalk and we both love it. But for the people who do not know what BodyTalk is, how would you describe it to a client that has no touch points with BodyTalk whatsoever?
Well, I always remind people that BodyTalk is really a protocol of healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a protocol that brings ancient concepts like Chinese medicine and Vedic philosophy together with cutting edge science, together with Western anatomy and physiology. It's a system that allows us to look at the mind, the body, the spirit. It is a system that allows the practitioner to really set up a dialogue with the body.
Mm-hmm.
This is really an opportunity, or I should say a really unique way of working, and that it respects the fact that the body is always on a journey of healing.
Mm-hmm.
But that there are obstacles that can get in our way, many of which come from the level of the mind, right? Our perceptions of what's possible, our tendency to be habit-driven creatures, right? Working through the same recipe on a daily basis. And this is a system that really helps us to identify where there's another potential that exists for that client, whether it's at the physical level, cells, organs, the lymphatic system, the immune system, the nervous system, etc. Rather, it's at the level of a belief system that's become conflicted, and the conflict of that belief system has caused stress, and that has rippled its way through to the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Rather, it is a influence of energy from a Chinese medicine perspective of the meridian system, from a Vedic perspective of chakras. Rather, we're looking even at the macrocosmic patterns, so the cyclical patterns that influence each and every one of us every day of our life,
Mm-hmm.
and how they might be impacting us, or even our relationship to our environment and how it mirrors, how it triggers stress without us really being consciously aware of it. So it's, I think, an incredibly extensive system in the fact that it can allow us as a practitioner to highlight any and all of these areas that might be impacting that client's health,
Mm-hmm.
not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally, and help them to get on track to, I always like to say, to an experience of ease.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much like moving something out of tension and into ease, so that the body can do what it is designed to do, which is to heal. It's incredibly efficient in that process. But a lot of times it's about shifting the mind to that potential for healing,
Mm-hmm.
and showing the pathway to it. So it's a really unique system in that no two sessions ever look the same. Mm-hmm. Between two clients, but even for that same client, right? Every session will be entirely unique, because the journey toward healing is unique to each and every one of us. So it's definitely in no way a one-size-fits-all approach to healthcare. It's really about helping to peel back the layers of things that have impacted the way that we see our health and our healing, our ability to achieve it.
And I think that's also one of the beautiful things for us as practitioners, that no session is the same. So it's never getting boring. Every time it's a deep dive into a client, and I think like, oh, this time we take that path, or this time we do that. For me, it's really like a joyride every time. And it's like, oh, this is something I haven't done before. So things get newer and newer for me as well. And I always say, like, I even learn from my clients that come to me, because I am like, not forced, but like pushed into a specific direction that I need to look up things. And it's like, oh, this is so cool. So I can use that too. So that's really something that is enjoyable for me. Like it never stops. That's a protocol that never stops when you can learn.
Oh, I agree. I always say to my students, I am more excited about BodyTalk now than I was 17 years ago when I started this journey. And there's not a session where I don't learn something new. Mm-hmm. There's not a day in my practice that I'm not absolutely shocked by, the body's capacity to heal. Mm-hmm. and how just shifting a mindset, for example, having an aha moment, as we say, can be instantly measured in physical change. Yeah. I think that that's absolutely incredible. It's exciting. And as you said, it never, ever gets boring.
No, Definitely not.
Yeah.
Maybe for the people that do not know about BodyTalk or never had a session before, we can squeeze in the tiny little demo session so we can show like, this is how we go about that as practitioners, and this is what they can experience in a session.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I would really just love to kind of introduce a few of the basic tools that are part of the BodyTalk procedure that might not everyone may be familiar with.
Yeah.
As I mentioned here, it's a protocol. So that just means that, you know, this whole system is kind of mapped out. It's like a journey to, here's a map of the body and the mind. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do? How is this going to unfold? What do we need to observe? And so every one of the BodyTalk practitioners is taught to follow a certain protocol, but even more importantly, we have a procedural process that is built on a consistent script or a consistent questioning process that helps us to identify where's an opportunity for healing today. And is there a story around that process, right? Are there environmental factors that may be playing a role here? Is there an understanding of the significance of how this particular balance is going to support healing? Is it supporting it at a physical level? Is it a representation of the mind as it's showing up in a symptom or in a challenge? Is there an emotional component to it? And are there relationships that we need to be aware of? One of the things I love about the BodyTalk system is it's entirely a medicine of relationship. So we never look at any one thing on its own. We're always looking at the relationship between this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, right? We know as humans, we're wired to be in relationship. We're in relationship with our environment. Every cell in our body is in a constant relationship with every other one. And so the whole procedural process of BodyTalk is really about relationship and reestablishing communication. So to do that, BodyTalk practitioners are trained to use a certain neuromuscular biofeedback, which is like, it's like testing a reflex. And it's a built-in reflex in every one of us. It's what we call a binary response, a yes and no response. And every one of your cells is responding this way 24/7. And as the macrocosm of 50 trillion cells or so, we also have this built-in reflex that we use on a regular basis. In this context of the BodyTalk system, practitioners are taught how to use that yes and no reflex as we're working through this predictable script or this predictable procedural process of helping to identify where what we call priorities or opportunities for healing exist today. We use tapping, right? Tapping is not a BodyTalk invention. It dates back centuries to ancient hatha yoga techniques. And it's used in many other modalities these days. It's not just a BodyTalk tool. However, the way we use it in BodyTalk is specific to our system. And with every balance that we do to help to implement that communication that we've observed, we use tapping in 3 different areas of the body: over the head brain. And when I say the head brain, that seems like a redundant statement. Of course, the brain's in the head, but it's not just located in the head. You know, the head brain, as we call it, is really like a computer. It's running our programs. What programs are running your show? So we use a tapping over the electromagnetic field of the brain, primarily to bring the attention of the nervous system to a potential we're observing with this balance. Then we always tap over the heart brain. And when I say heart brain, I'm talking about a neurological center within the heart. And this neurological center, it's been found, sends more information to the head brain than the other way around. So interestingly enough, the heart brain is very much like the programmer of the computer. So when we tap over the heart brain, we're essentially kind of like pressing save on your computer, because this is a process in which not only will we observed a potential for healing, but we're going to integrate that by now making it part of our new normal. And the heart, you know, in Chinese medicine, for example, is considered the central organizer of energy in the body. And as it's pumping blood, it's pumping energy, it's pumping information, it's pumping memory to every other one of those 50 trillion cells. So that's like pressing save. And then the third area we tap is over the gut brain. Now, the gut brain is something called the enteric nervous system. It is a whole separate nervous system. It is your first responder. It's your instinctive brain. And tapping over the gut brain is about integrating this new normal, not only into our human cells, but also into our microbiome. Interestingly, we have a very, very important, I would say, vital community of bacteria that support every aspect of our function. We can't survive without them. So tapping over the gut brain is a bit about bringing this to an instinctive level of health, but also bringing communication to that microbiome as well to identify this new state of normal. So we always tap over those three brains. We're using that neuromuscular biofeedback to identify where we're headed and what we're going to do today. And we use particular hand positions to represent different balances that practitioners are taught to incorporate as well. So those are some of the simple things that I'll be incorporating when I'm doing a session for you. And if listeners are not familiar with that, hopefully it just gives a little sense of what's happening, what's going on here in the session.
Yeah. And that was also the motivation for me, because a lot of people always ask me like, so how is that working? And then I say, I need to show you. I can explain that to you, but it's way better if you're experiencing it. So that is the demo that is basically helping the listener right now to also have a little bit of experience.
And I think that was a really good question right there, Dagmar, when you said, well, how is this working? And I think that regardless of talking about the tools that we use, I think that that's a very important question, because essentially, you know, BodyTalk is about observing. As a practitioner, I'm observing on behalf of the client a connection between the subconscious and the conscious mind. So I'm giving the body a voice. We're translating where possibilities exist so that the conscious mind of the client can tune into that possibility. It's like being a tour guide and pointing out the highlights of the tour, right? If I don't point it out, it's very possible that tourist can walk right by. Yep. They don't see it. And so my job as a practitioner, using the tools I've just described, is to highlight where there's a potential that exists that conscious mind has not been able to align to. Mostly because, as I mentioned to you before, we've accumulated in our life a large array of belief systems that direct our attention. And where our attention goes, our energy flows. This is what we're continuing to create. And a lot of times our attention is toward obstacles or what's not working or a symptom or something that we've experienced yesterday that we recreate today. And how it's working is essentially that through the BodyTalk procedure, we highlight, oh, look over here. Here's a possibility. This is an opportunity for a different experience of health. And then that conscious mind can make that little quantum leap of perspective, a shift of perspective, which is almost like shifting tracks. You know, if you were traveling on a railroad and the train shifts to a track, right? That's how I often think about it in the mind, is that when something comes up as a priority and we can have a conversation about it, the conscious mind now becomes aware that that's a possibility. And if that possibility aligns, right, if the client resonates with that at some very deep level subconsciously, then we can see that shift happen. So it's not so much about where I'm putting my hands, right? Or it's not a manual technique in any way, shape, or form, which is why we can work so effectively at a distance. It really comes down to the communication, hence the name BodyTalk, right? It comes down to the communication. And through that translation and communication comes the aha moment, comes the awareness of the client to something that exists for them that they weren't able to see themselves.
Yeah. I like that. It's also a great way. I definitely going to copy that with pride, because I always say to my clients, see me as a translator for your energy system. Your energy system wants to give you a message. You're not listening into it. And I'm just translated, like you said, like a foreign language. I'm translating that foreign language to you. So you're listening and you're paying attention. And then, like what you said, the mind comes in and then the energy follows. Everything.
Exactly. Great. Now, I always like to do a little bit of a evaluation before and after a session, simply because this is very subtle work that we're doing. And oftentimes we don't realize how much is shifting, how much is changing when we're doing a session. And I think evaluation gives us a great sense of where we're starting, what's shifting as a result of the session. And even more importantly, I believe wholeheartedly that evaluation in a session really shows a client that they have the capacity to heal. And not only that they have the capacity to heal, but they are healing right now. That is worth a weight in gold. Because when oftentimes when we come to the table, whether it's in a BodyTalk session or any other modality, we might be kind of at the end of our rope. We might be pretty frustrated. We might have become used to not getting results. And I think the moment that we can show a client that change is happening, and it's happening right now, is a really important part of the process. So if it's okay with you, as we do a little session, I'm going to take you through a little bit of a self-evaluation first and get some feedback as to, you know, what's going on in your body right now. What are you experiencing? And then we'll do the session, and then we'll come back and we'll reevaluate.
Go
Is that
ahead.
okay?
I'm
Okay.
positioning myself, both feet on the
Excellent.
ground and stuff.
Perfect. Now, I don't know, is it possible, I know that you're hooked up here with your microphone. Is it possible for you to stand up, or is it,
I can
are you on
try. I don't know if you can
I don't
fully
have to
see
see
me.
you. It's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. Then I
Just as long
stand
as
up.
you're not caught with your headphones. Okay.
Mhm.
Good. All righty. So now just take a couple of small steps in place. Just move your body a little bit.
Mhm.
And then bring your feet to stillness
Yes.
and close your eyes.
Mhm.
Now, with your eyes closed, can you just tell me a little bit about what it feels like to stand still with your eyes closed? Is there movement happening in your body at all?
Yeah, it feels a little bit like I'm moving forward. Like my feet are stuck to the ground, but I'm like leaning forward is better way, but on the waist, more on the waist that I'm leaning
Okay.
forward.
And do you feel like you're evenly distributing your weight between both feet, or are you favoring one over the other?
I favor the right now.
Okay. And with your eyes closed, let's just tour through your posture a little bit. Just bring your attention to your head position. Does it feel like it's centered, or do you feel any rotation or side bending, or maybe it's forward or backward?
It's not centered. It like slightly moves to the left.
To the left. Okay. And if we were to put a carpenter level across your shoulders, would they feel level, or would you feel like one is higher than the other, or maybe more forward than the other?
I think that the right one is a little bit higher. It's not significant, but it feels a little bit higher than the left one.
Okay. And how about your arms? Are they hanging evenly at your side?
No, that left one also feels like lower and heavier a little bit.
Okay. Let's do the same with your hips. If you put that level across your hip bones, do you feel any asymmetry there?
No, they feel symmetrical.
Okay. And with your eyes closed, can you take a couple of deep breaths all the way in and all the way out? And as you're breathing, I just really want you to be focusing on comparing the inhale and the exhale. Maybe one is easier or deeper than the other. What do you feel there?
It's way easier to exhale for me. And it's very interesting when I was focusing on the inhale, it feels like I can better breathe into the right part of my lung than in the left part. It's like it can fill up easier. That's how it felt.
Okay. And with your eyes closed, just scan through your body for any areas of ache or pain or tension. And if you find any, I want you to give them a grade on a scale of 1 to 10. So 1, it's just like a little awareness. 10, it's intense.
I have definitely tension in my neck area. I would say a 2.
Okay.
No, everything else feels without tension, feels flowy.
Okay. Alrighty. And if you bring your attention up into your brain, how does it feel to hang out in there? Is it loud? Is it busy? Are there monkeys? Is it empty? How would you describe it?
It is calm, but it feels heavy. It feels like it's really sunken into the skull. It's not like a flowy, easy, airy feeling. It's more like heavy.
Okay. All right. Very good. So that's our first little snapshot. You can come on back. We'll do a short session for you, and then we'll go back and revisit. We'll see what changed as a result. Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. So I'm going to do the session with the procedural questions out loud. I don't typically do them out loud for clients. Typically, what I will communicate to a client is where those opportunities for healing exist, what the story is, what the relationships are. So I'm kind of leading them down the journey with me. But because it might be useful for your listeners to hear the procedural process that we do on BodyTalk, I will do that today. And I just want to say it might not make any sense to the listeners, but I just want you to be aware of sort of the consistency of the language, and that there is a process that we're working through over and over and over again as we're identifying what we call priorities in BodyTalk. And I think that word priority needs a little bit of context, because priority to us as a BodyTalk practitioner is where that opportunity for healing exists today. Okay, it's like a key that unlocks a door. It is not indicative of a problem. It's indicative of an opportunity to step forward toward healing. It's a potential. So I just want to highlight that, because again, we can sometimes have a skewed or misinterpretation of that word. Okay, so I'm just going to have you take a couple of deep breaths in and out. I'm going to do the same. And as you're breathing, I'm establishing my no and I'm establishing my yes, my reflexive response, so that as I work through the protocol with my procedural questions, I'll be using that reflex to identify the yes or the no. Okay. All right, so permissions of priority, no. Sections of priority, yes. Section 1 of priority, no. Section 2, no. 3, no. 4, yes. Details on section 4 of priority, yes. More specific, yes. Body chemistry, active memory, cellular repair, lymph. So we're going to work with lymph. Lymph is working primarily in this context with the lymph nodes. So I'm going to go a little further, and then I'll give you a better description of what it is that we're doing here. Okay. Further, more specific on lymph is yes. Client hand position, zygoma, clavicles is the diaphragm. So I'm just going to make a note of that when we go to balance this. We're going to use the diaphragm as a type of supportive pump to these lymph nodes that we're going to be supporting today. So the diaphragms play a really important role in moving fluid in the body. Every time you breathe in and out, they're creating a pumping mechanism. And so in this particular balance, we identify which one of these diaphragms is going to be supporting the balance of the lymphatic system here. So we'll come back to that one. All right, so further more specific on the nodes, cervical, clavicular, axilla, further more specific now. Okay, so we're gonna work with the axillary lymph nodes. These are very important filters. They help to filter out pathogens, so bacteria, viruses, toxins. They help to filter out anything essentially that shouldn't be circulating in our blood. And housed in these little lymph nodes are important immune fighting cells. So it's also a place where we see the immune system go into activity. Now we're going to work to support optimal function in the nodes of the underarms. So we're going to work with them bilaterally, just an opportunity here to optimize their function. And I'm going to see if we have any further information on why they're coming up as a priority today. Okay, so do we have further details on the axillary nodes? We do. Orientation, no. Definition, yes. Physiology definition is yes here. So we're going to, this is specifically working at a physiological level, right? And interestingly, there's two physiological functions that we're supporting here, both the concept of filtration, so just helping to create greater efficiency in filtration, but also in immunity. So not just the filtration aspect, but we're highlighting the immune function here as well. So I'm just writing these things down when I'm working with the client. I always write down the priorities and what we call the formula. So the formula is something that happens when we have more than one thing connected. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but I'm making a note of it just because every word in a session is a vibrational frequency. Yeah. And when we create a formula for a client, or I should say we observe a formula for a client, it's like a vibrational remedy. So I'm writing these down just to evoke the frequency as well. So we have the physiology of immunity and of filtration. Okay. Further physiology definition, no. Further definition, yes. Consciousness, physiology, we're in emotion actually. So this is also a really interesting opportunity just to mobilize emotion. You know, emotion is a chemical in the physical body. And so when your brain experiences emotion, it produces what we call a neuropeptide. And these are chemicals of communication. Emotion is designed to create motion in us. When we don't respond in the moment in the way that it's designed to help us to move, we have a tendency to store it in our tissues. And like any other chemical, if it builds up in a tissue, it can affect its function. So when we have an emotional definition, it just means that there is some toxicity that's emotion in nature, and we're going to get that moving. So the body can either use that emotion in the way that it was meant to use it, or it can eliminate it like any other chemical in the body. So I just need to identify what emotion we're working with here. And it's the emotion of anger, but it takes me a little bit further to identify as frustration.
Amazing. It's so fitting.
So let's get that frustration on the move, because once we get it moving, instead of being a frustration state, it becomes motivation. It becomes productivity. And in fact, anger in the body is the fuel of repair. So very important, of course, when we're working anytime with supporting healing. Okay, so we have further on angers or frustrations, no. Further emotional definition is no. Further definition is no. Further details on these axillary nodes is no. So we know all we need to know about these guys, but let's see if we have what we call a link in BodyTalk, which is just establishing a relationship. And we do, and it's going to go into, sorry, I went a little fast there. I'll slow it back down again. Okay, so there's the link within lymph. No is the link in section 4. Yes. Details on section 4. Yes. More specific is yes. Body chemistry is yes. So we're going to work quite specifically here with the immune system. Now, in this particular technique, we use the saliva because the saliva of the body contains the energetic blueprint of everything that's happening biochemically in your body. So we're going to use a little bit of saliva. Now, I know because we're working here on a recording, I'm going to get you to use your finger. Typically, I would use a Q-tip or a cotton swab or something to allow the client to put a little saliva on there. And then we're going to put that saliva around the area of the navel. Okay, so if you can put a little bit of a saliva on your finger, and you can run on the skin just around your navel. Now, the reason we use the navel in BodyTalk is because it is the highest concentration in your body of neurology, vascularity, and energy. It's like the only place outside of your brain that has that concentration of nerve endings. And it's also a very porous area, right? It's an area that prior to birth in utero, it's where you absorbed all your nutrients. So it's highly absorptive. It is an area where the frequencies of the body can align to the frequency of what we put on the navel. So sometimes if we're working with an environmental factor, for example, or here in body chemistry, if we're working with a toxin or a pathogen of some sort, it highlights the presence of that in the system. So, all right, let's just see where we're going to go. So we're working here with body chemistry. Furthermore, specific is yes. Microbes is no. Toxins, no. Allergies, no. Intolerances. So an intolerance is just something where the nervous system, immune system is inappropriately overreacting. So I'm going to see where we're going to work here. We're going to find a little bit of balance for you. Okay. And it's interesting, it's one of your body's own chemicals.
Ah, that's always bad.
Yes. Okay. So I went through, is it something ingested, inhaled, absorbed? And I got no. And we have a category in BodyTalk we call other. And that's just taking us to things like climate. Sometimes we can literally be intolerant to a climate. It can take us to neuropeptide or neurotransmitters, hormones, a variety of things that we consider other than an external factor. So here we're working with a hormone, actually. And it's interestingly, it's estrogen. Okay. So all that really means here is that we have an opportunity to create a greater balance between the immune system and the endocrine system. Right? For some reason, the immune system overreacting or creating inappropriate inflammation to fluctuations in estrogen levels. And we can find easier balance here. Okay. And as I said, one of the benefits of that is lowering any kind of inappropriate inflammation that might be happening in the body. Now, when the immune system is attacking one of our own chemicals, we call that autoimmunity. It means the immune system, for whatever reason, has misidentified something that is actually an imperative part of our function as something foreign. And so I always think that anytime we can work with intolerance, especially towards something that's our own, is a very important area to work because it obviously helps to bring down inappropriate inflammatory processes. Okay, so furthermore specific is no. Do we have further details on the body chemistry? It's no. So we don't have anything else we need to know about that. But we're not quite ready to balance yet. So we still have a little bit more of a story that's happening here. Okay, so is body chemistry still a priority? No. Section 4, no. Am I going forward on the chart? No. Am I going backward on the chart? Yes. So our chart is like a roadmap. Am I going forward or am I in reverse? So section 3, section 2, section 1. So we're going back up here. Details on section 1, yes. More specific is yes. All right, 5 elements, 5 senses, consciousness, EGBs, organs, endocrines. The body parts come up as a priority. So we're working here at the physical body somewhere, but furthermore specific is yes, which means I have to keep going. I don't know where in the body I am yet. So is it brain? No. Head? No. Back? No. Chest? No. Abdomen? No. Limbs? No. Are we in the tissues box? Yes. So it's taking me to joints. Joints of the body. Furthermore specific, no. So all joints of the body. Right? So some opportunity here. And we have further details on these joints. So I don't need to go more specifically about them, but I need to know more about them. And in this case, we have something we call a subsession. So this is when we can do a specific balance or balances that are directly related to the joints, something to support them specifically as they relate to this bigger picture, this bigger story. Okay, so here we're going to do a bit of a mind-body balance. And sorry, I jumped quickly. I'll go back and show you how I got there. All right, subsession. So we're working with permissions of priority, no, sections of priority, yes. Section 1 of priority, yes. Details on section 1, yes. More specific, yes. 5 elements, 5 senses, consciousness. So consciousness is working with our perceptions, right? How do we perceive ourselves? How do we perceive the world? It is perhaps the most influential area that we can work simply because our perceptions create our reality. Mm-hmm. And when we're working with consciousness, we're working with a theme of the mind, and a theme of the mind that may, in this case, be represented by those joints. So when we have a conflict with that theme in the mind, it can show up in our physical state of health. It can show up like a symptom. It can show up like tension. It can show up like dis-ease, as we would say. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see where we're going to go here in consciousness. Further, more specific is yes. Is it general consciousness? No. Is it pathological consciousness? Yes. So pathological consciousness just means it's a theme of the mind that's out of balance. That's all it means. It's like a pendulum. You know, if let's say the theme is control. Control could be like a pendulum where we have a whole swing. On one end, we have utmost control. At the other end, we have absolutely no control. And we have a range of our relationship to control. Yeah. If we are stuck with the belief system that we must always be in control, for example, that could cause the pendulum to stop swinging. And we call that a pathology. It just means we're out of balance, we're stuck. And so any situation and when we're not in utmost control, we're in a state of stress. Mm-hmm. Now, that's just an example. That's not where we're going here, but just to give you a sense of what pathological consciousness means. Yeah. Okay. So let's see where we're going to go. Is this pathological consciousness associated with the joints? It's not specifically, which is interesting. Okay. Is it associated with an organ? Yes. Okay. Lungs, heart, liver. It's associated with the liver. And the liver represents many different themes of the mind, themes like planning, organization, communication. In this case, it took me to the consciousness of action, but it's taking me a little what we call more specifically. So it's not quite the right terminology. I just need to play with it a little bit. Interestingly, the consciousness of inaction.
Yeah.
When things aren't moving.
And okay. I am not moving. Like for the last 6 months, it's like I feel like I need to rest and my body wants me to rest, and I have a problem with resting because I'm usually always on the move.
My goodness. Okay, so that makes sense as to why it would come up as a priority, is because there's a bit of stress around that. And the nature of this balance is something we call an individuation balance, and individuation is a Jungian psychology term. I'm not going to go into a lecture on Jungian psychology, but individuation is basically when the mind is ready to let go of an old limiting belief system or systems. There can be many, right? Things that we've been conditioned to believe, like I must always be on the move, right? And if all of a sudden I can't move, I can be in a state of stress. Yeah. So in this case, instead of needing to identify any one belief system, we're doing a balance that essentially helps to shift anything that's out of alignment with the concept of, in this case, stillness, okay? Or what we'd say inaction. Okay. All right, so there's further details on the consciousness of inaction is no. Is there a link in the subsession? No. Is implementation of the subsession a priority? No. Is the subsession complete? Yes. Further details on the joints? Yes. So we do have to know a little bit more still about these joints, and it's actually going to take me into something we call an other systems definition. So it means we're looking at something other than Western physiology, and we're going to look at something that's coming from Chinese medicine. So just bear with me for a moment. This part I'm going to do a little bit quietly just because it's involving some of my own studies in Chinese medicine. And it's actually going to take me to a description associated with an acupuncture point. And this is a large intestine point in Chinese medicine, large intestine 4. But what's most specific about it is it's often called the great eliminator. It's really when we can let go of what we no longer need, right? And so we're bringing, at this point comes up as a priority just to give us a sense that when we're balancing the joints today, we're also balancing from the perspective of releasing tension, right? Releasing attachment actually is a better term, releasing attachment.
I love it already.
Excellent. Okay, so there's nothing further there. Further details or further definition rather of priority? No. Further details on the joints is no. Okay. Do you have a further link? No. Is implementation a priority? Yes. Is tap out a priority? Yes. Okay. So now we're ready to balance this, what we call a formula in BodyTalk, because it's a little bit like a chain of events. We're going to start out by supporting efficiency and filtration and immunity in those important nodes in your underarm. And that's the balance we're going to be actually physically doing. That is going to set off a balance within the immune system to help to bring a healthier relationship between the immune system and estrogen. Okay, so we don't have any kind of inappropriate reactivity happening in the immune system when your body is producing and circulating estrogen. And then that has a positive influence on the joints. And the joints at the moment, as we work with them, also represent a certain mind-body connection and give us the opportunity to shift any old outdated belief systems around inaction, things that may have been causing stress, right? When things aren't moving the way you want them to move and the stress that happens as a result, and then that's showing up in your joints, literally. We're also drawing on this energy from the acupuncture point that we call large intestine 4, primarily just because it's representing release of attachment and what that means, right? The flow of energy that comes when we let go of attachment. And rather that when we let go of attachment, it allows us to be in a state of ease and a state of receiving. Okay, so now we're ready to balance. So what I'm going to get you to do for me, Dagmar, can you take a hand just to your lower rib cage area in the region of just to represent the diaphragm muscle, the respiratory diaphragm. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a stimulation. I'm using my own body here as a focus tool. If we were physically in the office, I would do this on your body. And then I'm going to have you take some nice deep breaths in and out. And as I'm stimulating the lymph nodes, I'm also doing the tapping on those 3 brains. So first on the head brain, and I'm moving to the heart brain. And then finally to the gut brain. And then I have to repeat that because we're working with these bilateral nodes. So I'm working in both underarms. So I'm going to repeat the process just now on the opposite side. And you're continuing with the breathing. Excellent. Very good. And you can relax your hand. And I'm just checking to see if this formula is still a priority. It's not. Now, before I move on to see if there's anything else we need to do, I always just like to recommend that when we're working with lymph nodes, it's always a good idea after the session to drink some extra water. Because when the lymphatic system is active, when it's being efficient, oftentimes cells in that area might actively rehydrate, but your body also, or your lymphatic system is also balancing levels of water in your system. So it's always a good idea just to support with that. Okay. If you've had any aches or pains or you've had any inflammation in your body, that's an area where we could see improvement, right? If that immune system is no longer inappropriately causing inflammation. If we, as I said, help to shift this pattern around inaction and we find it fall into more of a position of ease as it relates to the movement of time or the physical movement of our body, etc., then that can have a very positive influence on your joints. So that's something that you could notice as well. Okay, now, let's see. So are the lymphs still a priority? No. Section 4 still a priority? No. Are we going forward on the chart? No. Are we going back on the chart? Yes. So there's something else we still need to do. We're not quite done yet. So section 3, section 2, section 1. Details on section 1 is yes. More specific is yes. 5 elements, 5 senses, consciousness, EGB. So this is something called essential general balances. This group of techniques all relate to communication within the body and the mind, and really things that can impact natural communication. And so let's see where we're going to go here. Furthermore, specific is yes. SB, no. Switching, no. Cortices is yes. So cortices is a balance that helps to support communication between the hemispheres of the brain and between the brain and the body. Further, more specific on the cortices is no. Further details on the cortices is yes. We have something we call an orientation here, which is just an external factor that in some way may have been influencing communication here in the brain. Time, person. It's an object, actually. Further on the object is yes. Is it an object at home? Yes. Further is yes. So we need to identify. Is it in your immediate space now? Yes. I'm just like drawn to your headset, but that's not it. Further, yes. So you must be plugged into a computer.
Yeah.
And do you have a keyboard? Because it goes a little further on the keyboard.
Oh, it's not an external keyboard. It's really like the regular keyboard of the laptop.
Okay, so there's, for some reason, the keyboard comes up as an external factor. I don't know why, right? Orientations are interesting because they're really subconscious. A lot of times it's reflecting an association between that object and the environment and some kind of unresolved or stressful experience from your past. So a lot of times we have no recollection of it because your subconscious is constantly taking snapshots of your life experience. So those snapshots include the environmental factors in any given moment. So if I have a stressful moment and I don't resolve that stress, so it stays kind of like an active stress in my system, any of the things that were in the environment at the time could trigger that stress pattern. And obviously I'm not conscious of it because it's not necessarily even part of the memory of the stress, but it is a part of that memory in the subconscious mind. Because your subconscious is like a cloud of information and it's storing all of these factors. Okay, so as we support communication in your brain, we're also creating a healthier relationship with this keyboard and whatever it was doing to kind of trigger an old stress pattern that it didn't need to do anymore. Okay, do we have any further orientation as a priority? No. Further details on cortices is no. Is there a link? Yes. It's actually within the EGB. So we're finding a relationship not only here with the brain, but within something else here in this category. Okay, so details on EGBs is yes, more specific is yes. SB, no. Switching is yes. The switching is a balance that helps to regulate the adaptability in your nervous system. The stress threshold, how much stress does your nervous system consider okay? And how much, when does it go into a fight-flight response? So switching helps us to come into kind of a more adaptable nervous system, a less reactive one. Okay, so do we have further more specific? No. Further details on switching? Yes. Orientation is no. Definition is yes. Consciousness? No. Physiology? No. Emotion? No. 5 elements. Oh, we have a 5-element definition. This goes from Chinese medicine and the concept that there are 5 energies that are like the ingredients of everything that we are. So when we're working with one of the 5 elements, we're working with one of our core energies in our body mind that impacts every aspect of us in some way. So I'm just going to figure out what it is, and then I'll give you a better sense of what it relates to. So it's taking me to what we call the water element in Chinese medicine, but it wants me to go a little bit further because it's relating to the concept of survival. That's a theme. Very strong theme in the water element. Everything associated with this element really helps us to survive in life. And sometimes in this case, we can have a sort of an excess survival fear. So a reactivity state in our body may be that we're just trying to survive through life, or things may trigger our sense of threat that may not need to. So when we balance the nervous system, we're balancing your relationship to that theme as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. So further on water is no. Further 5-element definition, no. Further definition, no. Further details on switching, no. Is there a further link? No. Is implementation a priority? Yes. Is tap out a priority? Yes. So now we can balance this. So again, what is the opportunity here? Opportunity to support communication within your brain, between the brain and the body, to bring focus, to bring ease and efficiency of function, to, in essence, really lower or balance your stress levels as well. Because if our stress threshold is too low, we may be reacting to things we don't need to. And so this is just bringing greater adaptability into that, so that I know I can't take the stressors out of your life, but what we can do is help you to become more responsive to them and less reactive to them. Okay. All right. Excellent. So again, I'm going to get you just to focus on your breathing. The Cordyceps technique involves about 5 hand positions. I'm going to involve you on the last one. Okay. But for the first few, I'm going to do all the work and you're just going to breathe. So anytime you can focus on that breath all the way in, all the way out. And I'm using hand positions here just to kind of traverse from the back to the front of the brain, creating a bridge of connection between those 2 hemispheres. And the breathing is an important element of every BodyTalk balance because it helps your brain essentially to scan the range of high frequencies and low frequencies in your body. It's our brain's ability to tap into, tune into every aspect, not just of the physical, but even of our mental, emotional state as well. And then finally, in this last hand position, if you can, I'm going to have you bring your hands lightly to the either side of your head. Perfect. And you're going to take some deep breaths in and out. This is just linking those temporal lobes and what we call the limbic brain, the emotional brain, the instinctive brain. Ooh, I feel very relaxed. You might be feeling that as well. Often my body's giving me a bit of indication of what you're feeling. Perfect. And you can relax your hands. Ooh, do you feel that relaxation?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we have a little bit of what we call downloading happening, which is just letting the body integrate before we can move on. And as that's happening, I'll give you a little bit of a sense that oftentimes when switching is balanced, especially, we just feel much more at ease. You know, the things that used to push our buttons just don't really push our buttons in the same way. So they can still happen, but we kind of flow with it with ease. It's not a big deal, so to speak. It can also really positively influence our relationships. Because a lot of times when we're in a bit of what we call a switch state, we can have some walls up and we don't even realize that we do, but it can impact how we relate to others. So oftentimes our relationships benefit when that nervous system is in a healthy state of balance. Okay, so downloading is complete. The formula is no longer a priority. Cordyceps is still a priority, no. EGB is still a priority, no. Section 1 is still a priority, no. Are we going backward on the chart? No. Are we going forward on the chart? No. Is this the end of the session? It is. Is future BodyTalk a priority? Yes. Is a specific time a priority? No. Specific practitioner a priority? No. So what that means is that there's more to the story. We can continue this process. There is not a specific time frame that just simply means that I mean, you could have BodyTalk tomorrow, you could have it next week, you could have it next month. Typically for my clients, I recommend about once a month or every 6 weeks is a good follow-up time. Specific practitioner helps me to identify, is there somebody specifically that would be supportive for you? In this case, the answer was no, which means you and I could continue that journey, or you could, of course, visit any one of your local BodyTalk practitioners. Excellent. All right. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a reevaluation, Dagmar, and see what's changed in your body.
I'm
so
getting up again.
Stand up. Excellent. We'll walk through that. Okay. So let's just do again a couple of steps in place as you did before, and then bring your feet to stillness.
Yes.
And you can close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, tell me a little bit about your balance. Does it still feel like you're moving forward?
No, it's actually like, it's not like my belly is tucked in, but it feels like it's better in place. So I'm not leaning forward anymore.
Okay. And do you feel like you're evenly distributing your weight?
Yes. More on the heels when I look at, like, I feel the entire feet, but it's like evenly on both heels.
Very nice. Okay. Now, with your eyes closed, just bring your attention to your head position. Do you still feel like it's off to the left, or does it feel a little more centered? What are you feeling there?
It's a little bit still to the left, but way more centered. And the left hemisphere, especially the frontal cortex, feels like super heavy.
Ah, interesting. Okay. And how about your shoulders? If you brought that carpenter's level across your shoulders, does that right one still feel higher?
It's still a little bit higher, but they both moved further back. They're not hanging. It was more like hanging in the front before, and now it's like I would stand more up straight. That's how it feels. But it's really tiny, just a tiny thing of being more on the right side up.
Okay. And how about the arms? Do they feel like they're hanging evenly at your side, or what do you feel
Yes.
there?
Yeah.
Good. And I know that your hips felt pretty symmetrical, but just tune into them now to see if there's
Mhm.
anything that you notice that's different or improved in any way.
They feel stable. So yeah, feel good.
Okay, good. Now let's do a couple of breaths in and out with your eyes closed. And let's just compare that inhale and that exhale, both to one another, but also comparing to how they felt a few minutes ago.
Way better. It feels like the lungs like distribute the air evenly now. Like it's definitely not like before.
Excellent. Okay. And with your eyes closed, just tune into that neck. I remember that you had a sensation there about a 2 out of a 10. What are you feeling there now?
Super easy. It's like it would be a 0 right now. It's like
Excellent.
it doesn't feel stressed or anything else.
Wonderful. And what's happening in the brain? I know you already said that that left cortex was feeling
Mm.
different. Is there anything else? I know you said that the brain felt super heavy before.
Yeah, it doesn't feel heavy anymore. It feels like it moved like I can't say it differently, like 2 millimeters up in total, and they're still processing on the left frontal cortex because it's still like working. It's like it's not a hammering. I can't describe that. It's like a movement, a vibration. It's like, leave us alone. We're still working here.
Excellent. Very good. Okay. Anything else that you're aware of?
I feel lighter in total. Like that's really cool. I enjoy that. It's like and nothing feels heavy anymore.
Oh, lovely. All right. Well, come on back and you can have a seat. And yeah, I always ask my clients too, rather that what came up in the session makes sense to you. Does it resonate at some level?
Absolutely. All of it. It's like it was so interesting when you came to the liver and then you said like or beforehand already said like, oh, we have the emotion of anger. And no, it's frustration. I was like, yes, I totally feel that. That was so resonating. It's like amazing. Also the joints, because I constantly have that topic with the lymphatic drainage. And it's like, yep, and joints and inflammation. And I do lymphatic drainage all the time for myself. So I was like, yeah, please do something about that. So that absolutely highly resonated with me.
Excellent, excellent. And I think that it's important sometimes that to realize that we're working in the subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
and not everything is going to relate consciously,
Yeah.
because we're digging around in the 90% of your programs that you may not even realize are there. But
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes after the session, even hours later, days later, we have additional aha moments where we're like, oh, I know what that was all about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite an interesting process because it does come up to our awareness over time.
Yeah.
So excellent. I hope that's really helpful for you, Dagmar.
Definitely. I was like, oh my goodness, because I was supposed to have a BodyTalk session yesterday. It fell through, and it's like, now I'm getting a session, and it's so amazing. Like it was really on point. I really love it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure.
No, it was really, really good. And it's like for me, it's always interesting to feel, especially when we were typing the two structures out. I got so hot, like everything felt like, woo, everything is on fire. And the moment the formula's through, it's like, shh, it's just what you said, like, oh, the relaxation sets. And I'm like, yes, and everything is like flushing out. It's always such a nice thing.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
No, it's really
Excellent.
good. So that is definitely a great thing to see how it works. And this is just like a tiny, tiny picture of what you can do. Like there's so much more, but it's great to have a session done. And so people know this is how it could work when they try it out for themselves. And I always hope people try out BodyTalk because it's so important. And it's so, it's like, I just can say it takes load off you. It's uninteresting in which area. Every time after a session, I feel like I feel better. And I think that's a feeling that a lot of people like to have.
Oh, definitely. And I think that, even in just that little session, you see the correlation between the physical body, the mind, our energies, the environment. You see that it is a system that really honors
Yeah.
the holistic aspect of self.
Yeah.
And and I think that, ultimately we're reducing stress, we're helping to create a greater state of ease at any one of those levels, physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual. And oftentimes, as you say, we just feel better. We feel, there's a weight released. And that's literally why, we're helping to move out of tension and into ease, which is our natural state of being. And I think that the benefits speak for themselves.
Absolutely. I really feel so good right now. It's like so chilled. Oh, so good.
Excellent.
So let us come back to one question that I really had in my mind. I don't know that story about you. How did you actually came to use BodyTalk? Like, are you one of the people that had a healing experience themselves and then said like, oh, I want to try that too? Or is there another part of you found your way to BodyTalk to use it?
Well, it's a great question. I found BodyTalk really on a journey of self-healing. I've had many challenging health issues in my life from a young age. I was in a time of my life where I was dancing professionally. I was a professional ballroom dancer, and I was struggling with chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was, I came from a Western medicine background. I had no introduction or relationship really to complementary healthcare. But Western medicine really at that point kind of failed me. They gave me a diagnosis, but no answer. So I was on a search to find an avenue of healing. And I think that inherently throughout my life, chronic fatigue was certainly not my first health challenge, but I always believed that my mind created it, my mind could heal it. I just always believed that at my core. So I started looking for supports, and I had a dance student of mine who worked in alternative healthcare. She didn't work in BodyTalk, but she worked in a lot of different energy-based modalities and things that I had never been exposed to before. And it was in working with her that I saw there was so much more to healing than just taking a pill or having a surgery. And so it opened my mind definitely to alternative ways of supporting healing and supporting the mind as it related to healing. And I realized that so much of my chronic fatigue syndrome was coming from stress in my life and where I was really out of alignment. I was very unhappy and I didn't know how to address it. And it manifested into illness. So it was that journey that kind of opened my mind to alternative healing. And I started dabbling and taking courses myself. I started working in Reiki, and I had a bit of a Reiki practice, and my clients loved it. And I could see that there were really positive benefits for them. But every time I was working with a client, I had a sense, that the body was trying to tell me a story. I felt like there was a whole story there, but I didn't know the language. I didn't know how to interpret it. I didn't know what it was trying to tell me. And I think the moment I made that realization, the next week I heard the term BodyTalk 3 times from 3 different sources. And it resonated with me because I felt like the body was trying to talk to me. And so I went online and I ordered Dr. Veltheim's first BodyTalk system book. And I was just absolutely blown away. I was 1 chapter in and I just knew I had to learn this. It just made so much sense to me. I'd never had a BodyTalk session, but the science behind it, the vision that he had about the interactions in the body, the interrelationships in the body, and how important communication was and how important that holistic approach was really resonated. So I took my first course having never had a BodyTalk session. My first session was in the class, in fact, and I left that class with my mind blown. I just, I didn't look back. I certified as a practitioner 6 weeks later. I just came out of there realizing I'd found something that resonated with me at the core. And it totally changed my health within, about 6 months of studying BodyTalk and beginning a practice in BodyTalk. And of course, receiving sessions. I realized I hadn't missed a single day of work. And for me, that was huge because I'd been struggling so much with my health. And as a self-employed dancer running a studio, and my employment was very much affected by my health. And I realized after about 6 months that I had not had a single debilitating headache. My energy was such that I hadn't missed a single day of work. And that was amazing to me. But aside from the fact that it changed my own health immensely, I very rapidly built a practice and a full-time practice, and I moved out of dance and into BodyTalk, and I never looked back. And I would say that the changes in my health and my life continue to this day. I mean, I look at the person I am now and who I was then, and the transformation is unbelievable to me. And it is nowhere finished. You know, it's this constant process of learning, or I should say unlearning what I thought I knew about myself. And it's an incredibly rewarding journey to be on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that also makes it so special, because most of the time the practitioners that I know, they go through their own story, and that's how they relate also to the system. And say like, okay, it helped me, so it makes sense to me to do that and to use it. So that's like really beautiful, because then they do it out of a passion to also become a practitioner.
Absolutely. And I have to credit the BodyTalk system for helping me through some incredibly difficult times in my life. And, you know, giving me the clarity, I would say the resilience, the perseverance to move through some major life challenges that were not necessarily, you know, physical at all, but more mental and emotional. And, you know, life is a series of experiences, and not all of them are easy. And I would say that it was entirely the concepts, the philosophies that I've learned through studying the BodyTalk system, practicing it, through receiving sessions from my colleagues, that have got me where I am today.
That's really good. And when you look at your practice now, what are topics that your clients come to you? Like, what is it about that they most of the time? Because what I experience in my practice is always like, they come to me and say like, I'm going to tell you something really strange, and probably you will not believe me. And I'm like, this is so, I already know they have that kind of thinking, because nobody else in the Western medicine department believed in them when they said, this is a connection, and I have no idea how it makes sense. And I just sit down and listen to them and say like, tell me everything you want to tell me, and then we can have a look. So how is it about you?
That's a great question. I would say that you know, I have such a range of people in my practice and how they found their way to BodyTalk. And I think that is a very common thing, that people find their way here, not as their first, the first part of their journey by any means. And oftentimes because traditional pathways have just not given them the answers that they need. In terms of my clientele, I think that oftentimes it's a reflection of where I am in my life. So I do have quite a range of people who come for physical ailments, but I also have a lot of people that come to me because they're working through life challenges, or they just really want to be the best versions of themselves. And, you know, they may have come in the door through a physical symptom, but then also realize that BodyTalk is so much more than that. And I have clients that have been with me for 17 years, and it's not because they're not getting better. It's because they just realize what a benefit it is for them to have this as part of their self-care. And they, you know, they think it's invaluable in terms of the way that they're in a constant state of self-growth. And so to your question, I think I have quite a range of reasons why people find their way to my practice. I would say that at this point in time, and at least for the last 10 to 12 years, it's been all word of mouth and referral just from clients who've really excelled, and rather physically, mentally, or emotionally, and have told other people. So I think that it's a constantly evolving thing. My practice is always changing. And a lot of times it's partly because of where I am at that point and what I'm working through. Oftentimes my clients appear because we're on the same page. We're walking a similar path. And so a practice really shouldn't be pigeonholed or stagnated in that way, because the practitioner is constantly evolving themselves. And so it is an evolving practice as well.
Yeah. I'm always saying to my clients, like, I'm unpacking myself. And the question is, are you also following with me on that journey, or are new clients coming in that have even more to unpack? Where I think like, oh, this is also a journey I have to take now, because every time the client is like a mirror to me, and I'm like, oh, yeah. And I think that is also one very important thing to mention. When you do that as a practitioner, you also, to certain degrees, always run a session on yourself when you're doing a session. So you're still constantly, while giving someone else a session, you're also healing yourself, which is so cool. I really love that about that practice as well.
Yes, I think that's absolutely beautiful element of what it is for a practitioner and a client and the relationship that we form together.
Yeah.
You know, as a practitioner, we can only take someone as far as we've gone ourselves, but to sit in and hold space for somebody as they're observing their own potential helps to highlight aspects for you as well. Right? You remember, this is, as I said, it's like the medicine of aha moments. And so a lot of times when the client is seeing something differently, the practitioner has the opportunity to see it differently too.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why that client appears on that day in your practice, is because at some level you are both sharing that journey. And I think it's an important thing as a practitioner to realize, is that, you know, we are in the business of healing together. And that's a beautiful aspect of everything that we do. And I think that it brings us a new found level of compassion often for new practitioners as they come into this work, to understand that client is absolutely mirroring them. And as a practitioner, I am mirroring for the client.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful entangled relationship that we share with our clients. And I'm so grateful first that this is what I get to do for a living. I'm so grateful that I get to witness transformation in my clients. And I'm so grateful that they come to me, because it also gives me an opportunity for transformation.
Yeah. And that's like the benefits of all levels. That's what I think is so beautiful. Like it's the benefits just never end. Whatever I do in this practice, whatever modalities I bring in, what other practitioners I bring in, it's like it's always beneficial. That is my feeling about that system as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So great. What are the next things that are coming up for you now? Like, you're teaching BodyTalk as well. So what is it that is next on your agenda?
Oh my goodness, what a good question. Within the BodyTalk system, I always have projects, a long list of projects on the go. I've just rewritten one of Dr. Veltheim's central core modules, and we've put it into 2 classes so we could really highlight an aspect of anatomy and physiology as we use it in BodyTalk, and we can highlight a really amazing standalone technique that I know you use in your practice, which is the Veltheim method of lymphatic drainage. I'm constantly supporting practitioners as they are training to advanced levels of certification, and I'm training new instructors as well. So it's an important role of mentoring that I continue to do in my practice. In my own business, I'm continuing to expand what my practice is all about. I've come from a background, as you know, of integrative medicine, which stands on the shoulders of quantum theory. And there are many aspects of what I teach and what I practice in BodyTalk that I am expanding on as well within my quantum physician umbrella, which is my own website. So I'm at the moment filming, producing some courses for anybody to use in their own life. How do we take these quantum concepts and use them every day in our life to optimize our own health? And that's not just our physical health, but the health of our relationships, our financial health, health in our business, etc. So I'm working on some of those projects right now, working on continuing to support my community with quantum physician within the BodyTalk system. And you know, I feel like I'm a lifelong student, and taking these concepts to the next level of communication is an important one for me. And I think what's driving me forward right now is very thing that we're doing together today, Dagmar, is having the conversation about what health and what healing is all about, what impacts our health and healing, and how can we empower our clients or find our own empowerment in our own health on a daily basis. Working with the client one-on-one is such an important element of healing, because as I said, we're wired to be in relationship. But I also feel it's important to be an educator and to educate my clients about their own capacities to heal, to become their own observers in their own life, and to perhaps begin to see themselves and to see their world differently. And when they do so, how do they impact that world that they're experiencing? So I'm on a road of continuing to educate through the BodyTalk system, through quantum physician, and to create some ongoing conversation and ongoing courses for people to incorporate these concepts in their life.
I love that. I'm looking forward, and I asked my system, like, when your classes are online, it's like, oh, should I attend some? Yes. So I'm looking forward to that when all the videos are online and you do these classes. Like, great.
Excellent.
Yeah, I love that. So is there anything you are doing as a further education that
I'm
comes
sorry.
up for you, that you attend as a further education? Because I'm always
Oh,
very
yes.
interested what other people do. And is there anything coming up for you?
Definitely. I mean, I really love Chinese medicine concepts. And so I'm excited to take some ongoing courses in Chinese medicine and 5-element theory. Right now I've been doing a lot of work in terms of consciousness. And so doing a little bit more of a deep diving and some research there.
Mm-hmm.
Research is a big focus for me right now. So some research in terms of the work that I'm already creating, but also research in terms of potential research going forward. That was something I loved to do when I was doing my dissertation, and it's something that I would like to do in the future. So I have, some ongoing education now in Chinese medicine coming up for me, and but a lot of creative work. So this is a time for me of a lot of creativity and writing. I've got some books that are begging to be written, and so it's a pretty creative time for me, and hopefully we'll see in the next year or so a prolific time.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds amazing. And I'm looking forward to all of that, because then you will also change that into further educations or anything else for people to use. That is
Yes.
great. So to our last question, are there any books or stuff that you can recommend? Like, I have next to me the book from our last interview, which is always a recommendation. And we kind of crossed that bridge today again when we worked on a lymphatic drainage system in my
Yes.
demo session. So it's like, silent waves it is. Is there anything
Well,
else?
I would have to say that the one book I always recommend to my students and to anybody who's interested in this approach to health and healing is The Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's just such a pinnacle of a shift in understanding how our beliefs are driving our physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helps us to understand the impact of the mind-body connection. I think that it is such an important piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly recommend his book. I love the writings of Amit Goswami, and Amit Goswami is a theoretical physicist, and he's written some, I think, very important books as well in helping to understand these same concepts of quantum theory. Now, quantum theory to me is where science and spirituality meet.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're working in quantum healthcare, it's really about that dynamic, is looking at the scientific understanding of how our mind is impacting our reality. So I love his work. He's written The Quantum Doctor. He's written The Self-Aware Universe, the Science of the Soul, very interesting books. And of course, the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza is also, I think, very helpful for people to understand their impact on their own health. I particularly like the book, You Are the Placebo.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this one helps us to understand our own superpowers of healing. And if the placebo effect is the belief effect of what we believe is possible, then I try in everything that I do to elicit that in my client. The belief that healing is possible, the belief that there is even greater potential, and how do I align to that? So I love the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza as well, and I would recommend that.
Yeah. Oh, great. I love to put that in the description, because reading stuff is always good to enter specific spaces that you're probably not working in right now. So that's great for everyone else who's listening.
I agree.
Thank you so much for your time, and that you came on again. And I'm looking forward. I'm probably going to find a new topic that I want to invite you in for. So thank you very much.
It's my pleasure, Dagmar. It's always such a joy to spend some time with you. Thank you so much for your invitation and for your great questions and an opportunity to do a session with you today.
You're welcome, and thank you again.